Hi, I'm Brielle, and my sister called me a poor cleaner inside the showroom I built from the ground up. She stood there, in front of clients and cameras, laughing like my sweat had been a phase. But what hurt more than her words was how everyone else stayed quiet. They clapped for her. They handed her credit for my name, my work, my legacy. But I wasn't just erased, I was replaced. What would you do if your own family rewrote your story while smiling in your face? Would you walk away, or would you make them remember exactly who you are? Let me tell you what I did. The morning sunlight cut across the marble floor like a spotlight on a stage I no longer recognized. My name was on the building, engraved in brushed gold above the entrance, but inside, I had become invisible. It was supposed to be a soft launch, quiet, controlled. Just a few industry people, returning clients, and press. I stood by the welcome desk, where I'd once greeted every customer myself, with a fresh espresso in hand and a practiced smile. I didn't expect flowers or applause, just acknowledgement. And then she arrived. Valora swept through the glass doors like she was walking a runway. Designer heels, hair curled to perfection, and that air she always carried, the kind that made people lean in, even if they didn't know why. She hugged the manager, laughed with the valet, and nodded at clients who didn't even know her name a month ago. They know it now, though. She made sure of that. She walked right past me. No pause, no glance. No "Hey sis, good job." Just air. Then, to a man browsing the latest model, she said with a breezy chuckle, "I used to help her clean houses. Now she's here too. Funny how life works, right?" He laughed. I didn't. I felt the heat climb up the back of my neck, but I didn't move. Even the staff, people I had hired and trained, looked away like they weren't sure what to do. I'd become a footnote in my own showroom. I stepped aside, letting the espresso cool in my hand. My feet knew their way to the office, even though I wasn't ready to sit. Just needed a minute. The air felt thinner in there. Kellen found her next. The showroom manager charming, loyal, to her. They'd known each other since Valora hosted pop-up shows in Brentwood. He handed her a glass of champagne and smiled like she was royalty. "She's the face of the brand," he told a small group of press huddled near the display. I wasn't 2 feet away. No one corrected him. A young intern, barely 20, fresh out of some marketing program, handed me a trifold brochure and said, "You can help with client parking today, right?" My lips parted, but I closed them just as fast. I nodded once. She walked off without a second glance. This wasn't confusion. It was intentional. The clients were handed flutes of champagne, personalized printouts, keys to preview models. I was offered silence. I excused myself. Outside, the noise softened. Santa Monica traffic hummed in the distance. I walked down the street, shoes clicking against pavement I'd walked for years. The same pavement I'd driven up and down, looking for the perfect building. The same sidewalk I'd paced when the first bank denied my loan. The same curb I'd sat on, knees up, when I signed my first lease and called it a win. I turned to look at the showroom. The glass walls shimmered. Behind them, my sister's laugh bounced between steel and leather. My staff nodded at her every word. I saw my name called well in metallic gold letters. She never changed it, just buried it. I thought of my first customer, the one who drove in because he'd taken the time to answer his questions online when no one else would. I remembered painting the baseboards myself because the contractor flaked. I remembered begging the city to fast-track my license application. I remembered all of it. I was never trying to be famous, just honest, just worthy. When I stepped back inside, I didn't cause a scene. I didn't cry. I walked straight to the reception counter, smiled at a client, and offered her espresso. She smiled back, almost startled by my warmth. Then Valora caught my eye across the room. Her stare wasn't curious or kind. It was sharp, territorial, like it touched something that didn't belong to me. But it did. All of it. I turned away from her. I needed a plan, not a confrontation. This wasn't the moment. But I would have one. That evening, I sat at my desk in the office. The room was dim, blinds half drawn. the sound of distant traffic crawling through the windows. I opened a blank document on my laptop, and I typed the first line. Not out of anger, not even out of pain, but clarity. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a letter that made silence into a sound they couldn't ignore. The words were clinical, calculated, and legally binding. This time, I wasn't playing defense. I emailed the document to myself, closed the laptop, and stared at the slow swirl in my coffee cup. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anger, but because something inside me had shifted subtly, like a floorboard finally giving under years of weight. Saturday started quietly. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, but cautions. I made coffee in my condo kitchen and leaned on the counter while scrolling through my phone. Notifications fluttered in like confetti likes, tags, reposts. Her face, again. My showroom, again. Valora had posted a slick video reel of herself twirling in front of the showroom windows. She'd tagged her brand in bold white font and captioned it, "My space, my aesthetic, my story." I watched the video twice, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. She used the tagline I created 3 years ago, "Built from grit, shaped by grace." The same words I wrote in a journal at 2 a.m., with tears smudging the ink. She delivered it with a smirk, camera zooming in as if she were the architect of all of it. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I screen recorded the video, bookmarked the post, and saved the audio. I knew what I was doing. She didn't just take the room, I whispered aloud, the words strange in my empty kitchen. She took my words too. By late morning, I was on a call with Devonthi freelance designer who'd helped me with my original branding. He hadn't changed. Still polite, still slightly too eager. "Hey, Brielle. I've been meaning to check in. Saw some of the new stuff going out. Looks like things are booming." I paused. "Devon, have you sent any of our old files to Valora?" Silence. Then a cough. "She asked for the editable logo files last month. Said it was a family collaboration, that you were both rebranding together. Seku thought it was all above board." "Did she use my original deck?" I asked, calm. "Just parts of it," he muttered. "The intro slides, the aesthetic palette." Honestly, I didn't think twice. "No worries," I replied. "Thanks for confirming." I hung up and sat in my chair without moving. My fingers tapped the edge of the table without rhythm. I wasn't surprised. I was tired of being surprised. By late afternoon, I was driving downtown. The traffic was sluggish, the air thick. I parked 2 blocks from the building and walked the rest of the way. The trademark office was sterile and quattro after row of computers. Beige walls. The faint click of keyboards. Thomas had helped me file our original name rights when I opened. I pulled up the database and typed in Caldwell Concept. The first result wasn't mine. A limited-use trademark request had been submitted under Valoris LLC filed 2 weeks ago. She had included photos of the showroom, brand pitch decks, color scheme references. It was my work, only with her name attached. I printed the screen and slid it into my folder. The sun was setting when I got back to my car. The streetlights flickered on as I buckled my seatbelt. I didn't drive immediately. I sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes on the red lights ahead. It wasn't about the logo. It wasn't about the caption, the video, the champagne, or the laughs. It was about my name, my risk, my rebuild, and how easily someone could steal it just by saying, "We're family." It used to sting. Now it just made things clear. That night, I opened my phone one more time and reread her caption. Every inch of this showroom reflects my journey. I felt something in me break. That night, I reread the caption she wrote. She said, "Every inch of this showroom reflects my journey." I felt something in me break. And when something breaks quietly, you don't scream, you sharpen. Sunday came with overcast skies, and just enough wind to lift the edges of my coat as I walked up the steps to the community center. The event was a brunch for local businesswomen, something it helped fund years ago, before it had a sponsor, before it had glossy brochures. Now it had a banner with Valora's name printed in cursive at the top and a crowd sipping mimosas like they were at a fashion show. I stood near the back, nursing weak coffee from a paper cup, not expecting much. I should have known better. The projector screen lit up with a slideshow of the showroom, the one I leased, painted, and opened with my first business loan. The one where I used to sleep in the back office during late-night audits. Valora took the mic and gave a little laugh, the kind that made the room lean in. I always tell people, she started, success comes from the strangest places. My sister and I used to clean cars together. She wore this big red apron, we called her Cherry. The room erupted. My throat didn't tighten, my eyes didn't sting, but something inside me slid sideways. They laughed because it sounded like a cute memory, something lighthearted, something shared. But that apron wasn't a punchline. It was survival. I bought it for $6.99 from a clearance rack at a hardware store. I wore it every evening after school when I scrubbed wheels for tips and wiped down dashboards in the winter cold. While Valora was at mixers and rooftop parties, I was kneeling in oil stains, my hands raw, my back sore. She never cleaned cars. She never touched the hose. I left without finishing my coffee. No one noticed. They were too busy clapping. Outside, the wind had picked up. I kept walking until the noise behind me disappeared into the street. Across from a closed bookstore, I sat on a weather-worn bench and stared at the sidewalk like it might explain something. The red apron. The janitor's closet where I used to change clothes before night shifts. The smell of bleach mixed with cheap citrus cleaner that stuck to my skin. The calluses on my palms I used to file down with sandpaper because I couldn't afford gloves. I'd buried all of it. Not out of shame, but out of strategy. Because when you grow up in a family where attention is currency, you learn early. Stay small, stay quiet, stay out of the spotlight unless you can guarantee applause. Valora had taken my quiet and turned it into a costume. You don't forget a red apron when it was all you had to protect your dignity, I murmured to no one. It wasn't just the lie. It was the ownership of my history, repackaged as a laugh line. I sat there for a long time, letting the truth settle, not the truth of what happened, but the truth of what it meant. She didn't just rewrite the story. She told it in front of a crowd that had no idea they were clapping for the wrong girl. That night, I stayed home. I didn't answer emails or calls. I opened an old storage bin in the hall closet and pulled out a file box. Inside, receipts, photos, handwritten schedules, grant rejection letters, and client thank you cards. I started laying them out on my kitchen island, one memory at a time, one proof point after another. Then I grabbed a blank notebook and began drafting a timeline. Each entry had a date and a fact. No emotion, just markers of effort, of ownership. I pinned a photo of the red apron to the corkboard above my desk. It wasn't pristine. It had a bleach spot near the pocket and fraying along the hem, but it was real. Mine. I didn't feel broken, I felt awake, and I wasn't letting her write me out anymore. I wasn't erased, I was overwritten. And that's easier to expose. Sometimes a sister doesn't need to raise her voice, just raise a file folder. It was one of those Mondays where the air already felt brittle by noon, tense and sharp, like it was holding its breath. I had just poured myself a second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with Lorraine's name. I didn't pick up, not immediately. I watched the screen until the last vibration died out. It wasn't about playing games, it was about control. I wanted to decide the tone of this conversation on my terms, not hers. When I finally returned her call, I was calm, detached. She, on the other hand, sounded warm. Overly warm. Like someone trying to wrap poison in a velvet ribbon. "Brielle," she said, "can we meet for coffee? Just us." No pressure. It's been a while. There was pressure. The kind you feel in your chest when someone says no pressure. We met near the marina at a cafe that smelled like rosemary and entitlement. Lorraine was already there, seated at a corner table. Her blazer looked expensive but not loud, the kind of neutral beige that screams money only to people trained to notice it. She stood as I approached, arms opening just slightly. "You look well, Brielle." You too, I replied, settling into the seat across from her. We skipped small talk. No weather, no mention of holidays or how fast the year was flying. Lorraine was always surgical with her words when she had a mission, and today was no different. I've been watching things unfold, she began. The business, the buzz. Valoris really come into her own. There it was. The thesis statement. She connects with people, she continued, smoothing her napkin. Media, clients. She brings something magnetic to the room. That's a rare trait. I smiled faintly. Has she? Lorraine leaned forward, eyes soft but sharp. You've built something incredible truly. But sometimes, it's wise to let the one who shines shine. People remember the face, not the blueprint. I stirred my coffee, letting the silence expand just long enough to shift the energy. So what are you saying, Lorraine? That I become the ghost in my own legacy? Her tone stayed sweet, but her delivery was clean. Of course not. I am saying maybe take a quieter role. Behind the scenes, brand identity can suffer when it's split. I blinked slowly. Did Valora say that? Or did she just let you say it for her? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. This isn't about sides, Brielle. No? I raised an eyebrow. Then why does it feel like I'm being politely removed from my own table? She took a careful sip of her coffee and delivered the line I knew was coming. Some people build, some people shine. Valora shines. Let her. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I stood, smoothed out my jacket, and slid my chair back under the table. Thanks for the coffee. Outside, the wind off the water slapped my face, and I welcomed it. It wasn't refreshing, it was clarifying. Like the kind of cold that made you remember things. Made you remember who you were before the world asked you to shrink. At home, I climbed up to the top shelf of my closet and pulled down a storage box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were folders and binders, some of them warped from age, others still stiff like they'd been waiting. I dragged everything to the dining room table and spread them out like a case file. Contracts, handwritten notes, concept sketches, presentation decks, articles, my name in footnotes, in credits, on filing slips and headers. Valora's name didn't start showing up until much later, and even then, only in the glossy parts. The launch parties, the interviews, the magazine spreads, the curated side of a story already written. I worked through the night, creating a timeline. I highlighted discrepancies, dated everything. I didn't rush. I wanted it to be airtight. Not for vengeance, but for clarity. Because truth, once silenced, has to be louder when it returns. When I finally sat back, I opened a blank Word document. At the top, I typed, "If she insists on erasing me, I'll show them who built the ink she writes with." Then I sat there, letting the weight of that sentence settle into the room. I had always avoided confrontation. I was the quiet sister, the steady one. But erasure isn't silence, it's theft. And I had learned to document everything, not for applause, but for moments like this. Moments when your absence becomes your proof. Sometimes, people mistake the quiet ones for the forgettable ones. But it's the quiet ones who write everything down, who build the scaffolding and hand you the keys until one day, they quietly change the locks. I hadn't raised my voice. I didn't need to, because sometimes a sister doesn't need to shout. She just needs to raise a folder and let the truth speak for itself. I never liked confrontations, but theft of truth is a war I've trained for without knowing. The showroom sparkled under carefully arranged spotlights, every panel of glass polished to reflect a success story that had been rewritten. Thursday night's launch event was meant to debut the new luxury model, but it might as well have been a coronation. I arrived early, not to impress, but to prepare. I wasn't on the printed schedule, but I knew my name would still carry weight if only in the silence of a mission. Inside, the mood buzzed. PR girls fluttered between displays. Guests posed beside vehicles like they owned them. Local news crews hovered near the back, setting up tripods and testing sound bites. I checked in, gave a polite nod to Kellen, who barely returned it. The young intern who once handed me brochures now wore a headset and clip-on badge like she was running the show. I didn't see Veloriot. My reserved seat was marked. Row 2, far right, second row. I took it without protest. The first row had white orchids. Mine had shadows. Moments later, she appeared. In cream silk, with a custom nameplate pin resting just below her collarbone, Valora Gray, chief visionary. She waved to the cameras like royalty, her smile already choreographed. As the music faded, the MC took the stage. "Tonight," he began, "we honor not just innovation, but legacy. The Caldwell story isn't just about cars, it's about family, about reinvention, about the boldness to dream differently." He gestured toward Valora. And none of that would be possible without the guiding light behind this brand's evolution. Please welcome the woman reshaping luxury itself, Valora Gray. Applause erupted. I clapped with them, just slow enough to be unreadable. She took the microphone like it belonged to her hand. "I remember the early days," she said. "Late nights, ideas scribbled on napkins, chasing a vision nobody else saw. My father always told us, if you can find the right path, build it." So I did. And I've had help along the way, from people who saw in me what I was still discovering. She named Lorraine. She quoted our father. She did not say my name. The omission wasn't subtle, it was precise. I sat there, composed, while the crowd rose to their feet. A woman behind me whispered, "Isn't that her sister sitting there?" Another voice, "You'd think she'd be on stage." I turned slightly and smiled. Not yet. The program wrapped. Champagne glasses clinked. People lined up to take selfies with Valora in front of the display model. I wandered toward the far end of the showroom, away from the noise. That's when I heard her voice again. This time, from the main office. She was live streaming. Through the glass wall, I saw her phone propped against a branded stand. Behind her, the showroom looked like a magazine spread. "And this space," she was saying, "this space reflects my journey. Every inch tells a story, me story." I stepped into the doorway, just out of frame. "The team here," she continued, "they're not just co-workers, they're family." That's when I said it. Family doesn't forget who built the foundation. She froze. Not visibly, just enough that the curve of her sentence slipped. Her eyes flicked toward the doorway. The live stream comments slowed, then erupted with question marks and emojis. Someone off camera whispered, "Cut it." Valora pressed her screen, and the feed ended mid-frame. For a few seconds, no one spoke. She didn't say anything to me. I didn't need her to. The audience she cared about most had already heard what mattered. Valora's smile dropped first. Then the viewers started asking questions she couldn't answer. Some people fear confrontation. I fear becoming invisible more. The morning after Valora's livestream stunt, I sat in my home office with a cup of strong coffee and a file open on my desktop. The recording wasn't new. I'd had it saved for over a year, buried under folders marked legal and brand use. But I hadn't listened to it in a long time. I clicked play. She's good at scrubbing floors and staying out of the way. Let her do that. Her voice poured through the speakers like acid in slow motion. It was a recording from a call she hadn't known was being monitored back when she was trying to push me out of a supplier contract and thought she was talking to a friendly middleman. I didn't flinch. I just paused the file, labeled it with the date and timestamp, and saved it under a new folder. If needed. I texted Thomas. He was more than a lawyer. He was my friend, and the only one who never once acted like I was paranoid. I sent him the audio. A few minutes later, he called. "This isn't the kind of thing you toss out casually," he said. "You sit on it. Let her keep digging. When she's waist deep, you drop it." I closed my laptop. Understood. By late afternoon, I was driving toward Lorraine's house with a thank you basket I didn't want to give. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, but I kept my face neutral. The house looked the same, white trim, manicured hedges, too many wind chimes. She greeted me like always, with a hug that never quite closed the gap between us. "You didn't have to," she said, motioning to the basket. "I know," I smiled. "But I wanted to." We sat in the sunroom. She talked about a foundation gala she and Valora had attended last weekend. I nodded when appropriate, responded when needed, waited for her to excuse herself for a phone call, which she did, like clockwork. As soon as she stepped into the kitchen, I walked down the hallway to the office. I knew she kept the safe in the same place tucked, behind a sliding panel in the bookcase, half hidden behind old property deeds. I pulled the panel, crouched down, and entered my father's birthday. The click was almost insulting in its ease. Inside was exactly what I suspected. The original, signed Wilmy, father's own handwriting, notarized, stamped, dated. The showroom was mine. Not shared, not partial, not pending. Mine. I photographed every page with my phone. I didn't touch anything else. When I closed the safe, I locked it with the same precision I'd used to open it. By the time Lorraine returned, I was already complimenting her on the new hydrangeas outside the window. That night, Valora called. No text warning, just the screen lighting up with her name. I let it ring once before answering. She didn't waste time. "We need to talk, so talk." Her tone shifted. "About the live stream." "It was nothing, a PR thing. Spontaneous." "You had a branded stand for your phone," I replied. "That's not spontaneous." Silence. "I'm not trying to erase you," she said. "You're just not as visible. I bring a different audience." I let her talk. It was always easier that way. Let them fill the air until their own words incriminate them. Then I spoke. "If you continue using my name, my story, or that showroom like you built it, it'll release two things. A recording and a will. Neither one flatters you." She exhaled sharply. "You wouldn't." "I didn't say I would," I replied. "I said I haven't. Yet." Another pause. This one longer. "You're threatening me now?" she said. "I am informing you. Call it what you want." I ended the call without waiting for a response. Then I sat back in the chair and let my breath settle. For once I didn't feel hollow. I felt certain. But she didn't retreat. She doubled down. That's when this stopped being personal and became war. Valoris' idea of war wasn't subtle. It was public, performative, and meant to humiliate. Saturday night, I walked into the ballroom of the Ashton Hotel, having RSVP to a last-minute invitation from an unnamed donor. It was a charity dinner at least on the surface. Velvet ropes, champagne trays, carefully dressed silence. The kind of event where people pretend they aren't watching each other, even though every eye scans every label, every hand placement, every whisper. I had no idea Valora would be there. Correction, I had no idea it was her event. Until Dean stepped on stage. Dean. My ex. He hadn't changed much. Maybe a little grayer at the temples. Maybe his suits fit better. But the eyes? Still calculating. He spoke about the importance of local entrepreneurs, community trust, and then introduced the woman behind the creative heartbeat of our brand partnership. My wife, Valora Gray. Applause thundered. I stood rooted to the floor, unsure if I'd laugh or walk out. Valora emerged from backstage like she belonged to the lighting. Cream-colored gown, gold earrings, her hand resting casually on Dean's shoulder like she'd never had to fight for anything in her life. And then she said it, loud enough for the nearby table and the camera crew to hear. "Funny how life works out," she smiled. "I got the company. And the man." People laughed, some uncomfortably, some easily. I didn't. I found a seat near the back, away from the stage, and stayed through the dinner out of something that felt like dignity, but may have just been defiance. I listened to her speech flowery, empty, wrapped in false gratitude. After dessert, I stepped outside. The garden was lit with soft strings of lights, and the air had cooled just enough to remind me it was still real life. That's when I heard a small voice behind me. "Are you Mommy's assistant?" I turned. It was Tinsley, Valora's daughter, 7, maybe 8, wearing a glittery headband and holding a half-melted cake pop. "I'm sorry?" I asked gently. She smiled, wide and innocent. "Mommy said you used to clean for her. That's why you know everything about the showroom." I crouched to her level. Is that what she said? She nodded, pleased to be helpful. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. That's very kind. Then I stood, walked back into the ballroom, and found the nearest exit. By the time I got home, my skin felt like it had been peeled back layer by layer all evening, the kind of raw that doesn't bleed, it just burns. I poured a glass of water, set it down untouched, and went into my office. There, in a file box I hadn't opened in years, was a photograph. Faded, a little bent. Me and Dean. Before Valora. He had his arm around me, not possessively, but naturally. I looked happy. Naive. I remembered what he used to say when I worked late. You'll never be soft enough for family, Brielle. You're all edge and numbers. And Valora? She'd watched that crumble, then stepped into the life I'd been building without ever picking up a hammer. She didn't want her own story. She wanted mine, just without the weight. I walked to the whiteboard on my wall, picked up the marker, and wrote, my name, my father's trust, my business, my future. She's after all of it. I stared at the list until the letters blurred. I had one thing left that was undeniable, the truth, and it was time the world heard it, raw and uncut. If she wanted my life so badly, she could keep the fiction. I'd bring the facts. By Thursday afternoon, I was already at the showroom when it happened, and come in to meet with the finance team about quarterly reports, trying to keep my head down, keep the work moving. But fate doesn't wait for permission. A walk-in client, young, confident, holding her phone like it was a third hand asked for a tour. Valora, of course, stepped forward with her signature rehearsed enthusiasm. This space? She said with her trademark smile. Oh, it's mine. All of it. I shaped the experience top to bottom. You see, my sister used to mop floors. Now she pretends to run empires. The words sliced through the room like a blade. I was in the next room, just outside view, hearing every word. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, it was worse. It was casual. The kind that says, we all understand who matters here. The client didn't say anything, but I saw her glance sideways, a slight frown forming. I didn't know at the time that she was live streaming. That video hit TikTok less than an hour later. Title? Luxury Lady Destroys Sister's Dignity at Her Own Showroom. By dinner time, it had crossed 1 million views. By morning, the comment sections were wildfires. Wait, she said used to clean floors? She's the real owner? This feels like textbook erasure. Where's the sister? We want her side. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. I spent that evening in my home office with Thomas. We pulled up weeks of security footage, clip by clip. In one video, Valora was introducing herself to a visiting investor as co-founder and head of creative. In another, she was accessing my private files from the main office desktop. Then there was the final Clifford whispering to Kellen, instructing him to remove my name from the presentation slides before sending them to a sponsor. Thomas packaged it all neatly on a USB and walked it into the offices of 3 different reporters he trusted. Not tabloids, legitimate business outlets, the kind that care about evidence and ethics. Then I wrote my statement. Friday morning came with overcast skies and a tension that felt like static in my teeth. I stood outside the showroom, a small podium set up by the front steps. Microphones blinked red with recording lights. Reporters stood at a polite distance, notebooks ready. I didn't wait for silence. I spoke like I was telling a room full of old friends the truth they already suspected. I built this place with my own hands, with every dollar I saved, with every late night spent arguing with banks and painters, with my father's trust and a belief that hard work was enough. I paused, scanning the small crowd. What was taken wasn't just a title or a spotlight. It was my name, my story. But I'm taking it back. I gestured to the portable screen behind me and hit play. The video was short, just enough. Valora's voice came through first, her laugh, her words, her erasure. The crowd didn't gasp, they shifted. You could feel the current change in their eyes. Valora's team issued a statement within the hour. She deeply regrets any misunderstandings. I didn't respond. The showroom stayed open that day. Business continued, but the air had changed. Clients looked at me differently. Staff offered eye contact. The silence that used to hum with dismissal now buzzed with recognition. But peace? No, not yet. The truth was out, but peace hadn't arrived. Some wounds still needed a reckoning. Just because you win doesn't mean you heal. Some things still echo in the silence. The showroom was still. Still in the way a space can only be after a storm has passed and taken the noise with it. 1 week had gone by since the press conference, and the silence felt earned. No reporters at the windows now. No anxious footsteps. No accidental flashes of a camera lens through the bouquets at the entrance. Just the gentle hum of the HVAC and the quiet, steady clicks of my heels as I crossed the polished tile floor. It was early Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the light filters in soft and slow, spilling through the tall windows like it, too, had decided to exhale. Then the front door chimed. I turned toward the sound, expecting a delivery or a client who'd mistaken the hours, but it was Marilla Boone. The same woman who had once stood at the back of the conference room, silently watching as I was interrupted, dismissed, and spoken over. Now she stepped through the door with deliberate grace, her burgundy beret angled just so, her coat buttoned to the collar. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried something deeper, older than sympathy and gentler than pity. It was something like earned respect. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, her voice as even as ever. "Not at all," I said, already walking to meet her. She held out a small envelope. It wasn't thick or grand, just plain ivory paper, folded with care. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for reminding me that dignity still matters in this world. I'm not someone who knows much about business, but I do know when someone is being wronged. And I know what it looks like when someone decides not to let that be the end of the story." I didn't trust myself to speak right away. I took the envelope with a small nod, swallowing a lump that came quicker than expected. Her words weren't grand or rehearsed, but they hit me in a place that still felt bruised. She left soon after. No fanfare, no lingering. I didn't open the envelope until later. Inside, a short handwritten note in blue ink, cursive letters leaning gently to the right. It simply said, "Some people speak loudly, others speak clearly." I heard you. I sat with those words for a long time. She hadn't praised my win or my strategy. She'd seen me not for what had proven in court or in front of cameras, but for what I had chosen to carry with composure when it would have been easier to throw it all down. That afternoon, Thomas called. "It's done," he said without preamble. "The trademark is secure. The tax filings are in. Valoris LLC was dissolved last Friday." A beat of silence passed between us. "Media pressure did what courtrooms couldn't," he added. I leaned against the window frame, looking out at the street below. "She gave it up?" I asked. "Technically? Yes. Publicly? She's still spinning it." He forwarded me the press release. The headline read, "Valora Drayton announces graceful exit from company for sake of family unity." I read the statement aloud, tone flat. Sometimes letting go is the most powerful choice. A breath escaped me, half laugh, half disbelief. "She never knew what unity meant," I murmured. But I didn't need her apology. I didn't need headlines or retractions. What I needed, truly, was for the silence that followed to feel different. And that's what I got. That evening, after the final client's car pulled away and the showroom lights dimmed to their warm golden hue, I wandered the space alone. I walked past displays, each now arranged with intention. I passed the conference nook, the tall ficus in the corner, the samples arranged by tone and texture. All of it now felt like mine again, not because a court had ruled it, but because I had reclaimed it, piece by piece. Eventually, I reached the hallway near the back, the one clients rarely saw. It was where deliveries were signed for, where staff took coffee breaks and laughed in quiet corners. And there, behind a glass panel just above the coat hooks, was the red apron. Pressed. cleaned, framed. No title, no inscription, just fabric worn and simple and memory. It hung at myself that morning, without ceremony. It wasn't there for clients to admire or to spark conversation. It wasn't even there for Valora. It was for me. I stared at it for a while, arms folded across my chest, the silence around me now a friend rather than a punishment. In that small frame, I saw everything E'd once been taught to hide. Effort, labor, roots. And now, pride. I used to think power looked like a microphone, that it had to be loud, public, sweeping. But now I know it can also look like something quietly permanent. Something you mount behind glass, not to forget, but to honor. A thought came then, unexpected and unplanned. Forgiveness isn't always a door you open. Sometimes, it's a door you lock so you can finally walk past it. Sometimes, surviving the storm isn't the story, it's what you do with the quiet afterward that matters. I didn't fight for revenge. I fought for recognition. Not to be applauded, but to be seen. If this journey taught me anything, it's that silence can be power. But only if you know when to hold it and when to break it. To those of you watching, maybe you've had your name taken out of something you built. Maybe your story was retold without your consent. Maybe, like me, you've sat in a room full of people clapping for someone else and wondered if it was worth speaking up. Let me tell you, it is. You don't need to shout to be heard. But when you do speak, make sure it's with clarity, not anger. With truth, not noise. Stand your ground not to win a spotlight, but to reclaim your foundation. What about you? Have you ever felt erased in your own life, at work, in your family, or in your community? What did you do about it? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. If this video resonated with you, type 1 in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I value every perspective. If you want to hear more stories that hit close to the heart and honor the quiet strength inside us all, don't forget to subscribe. Your voice matters, your truth matters, and I'm here to tell more stories just like this one.